Hi everyone. Welcome to yet another session of Insight. The objective here, of course, is to showcase how exactly law school functions. Today's topic is a very interesting topic. We will be covering offences against women today. So, of course, with the current, offences and violence against women, it's very important for every one of us to know what exactly are the statutes, the major laws which help us address the violences and the offences which are there against women. So we are joined by a eminent scholar today. We are joined by Ms. Bharti ma'am. She will be going ahead with the session. She will talk about everything related to the offences, the major offences against women. So, be it rape, be it voyeurism, be it stalking, be it outraging the modesty of a woman, be it any other important laws of. For instance, in 2013, the workmen harassment law was passed. In 2005, the Domestic Violence Act was passed. So she'll try and cover more or less every important law which includes the offences against women. And whatever questions you have, if in case you have any problems, do write down on the chat box or the Q&A section. Once ma'am finishes the session, we'll try and address them. So welcome to the session, ma'am. Hope you're doing good.
A very good evening to all of you students. As you all know, the topic for today's discussion, Aditya sir has briefly introduced this topic to you all. And before we ponder into this topic, before we discuss as to what all offenses are there against women in our country, let's quickly discuss the status of women that existed in ancient India and as well as contemporary India. All right. So, as far as the status of women is concerned, and if we talk about the ancient India, referring to various scriptures like Rig Vedas, Upanishad, we understand that women held a high place of respect with dignity in the society. Not only this, they are conferred with many rights. Let's say, for example, educational rights. Women were free to to seek this freedom, this right, exercise this right, and hence there was as such no restrictions to it. They again shared equal status with a male counterpart. They weren't subjected to any sort of discrimination. They were also free to exercise political rights. They had a say to various political matters which existed at that time. And even you'll be astonished to hear that the women in ancient India, they had the right to choose a husband of their own choice. You must have heard about Swayamvara, right? Wherein Sita had chosen Lord Rama. All the competent kings were invited for such swayamvaras wherein they were allotted certain tasks, and in case of Rama obviously it was to hit the eye of a fish, and of course the one who succeeded, Sita would marry the person. So such kind of freedom was exercised by the women in ancient India. They lived a life as equal to their male counterpart and had all the freedoms and rights generally. But then if we see, if we compare the status that we have in contemporary India, we again we feel sad to know that there has been deterioration of status of women. Okay, the status have been relegated, mitigated. Now women are subjected to various discrimination, whether it is social, political, economic, and there are various factors that have attributed to it. The most important factors generally that we talk about or that we hear is the invasion of India by the Mughals, by the Britishers. When they intruded the country, there was exploitations of women. So as a result of which, there were various evil customs and traditions that were started being practiced, like for example, parda system, and then confining the women within the four walls of the houses, not allowing them to move out, not conferring them any rights, no political say, right? So all those rights which were then exercised by the women in ancient India were slowly and gradually taken away from them because of such intrusion and invasion, which resulted in evil customs and traditions. Again, this has resulted in, many other this has actually caused various other uh, effect on the society. Let's say, for example, the sex ratio. There has been immense declination of the sex ratio of women. Various practices, let's say, for example, female infanticide and feticide. So feticide and infanticide, if you see, is basically the practice wherein a woman or a female child is killed. In feticide, it is in the womb of the mother itself, and infanticide, wherein the child is born, the gender is revealed, and thereafter, such practices through which the life of the child is taken. All right. So the sex ratio fell down. Apart from that, literacy, women weren't allowed to move out. Their right to education was taken away from them. They had no right to participate, no political participation of women. So this showed, or this shows that how the status of women has degraded slowly and gradually. Various other practices, like, for example, dowry debts, child marriages, domestic violence, rape, sexual harassment, exploitation of women at workplaces were quite rampant. Apart from that, humiliation, molestation, wife beating, which is also known as battered women syndrome, wherein the husband frequently, the husband considers that once they marry, they have the license to ill treat or mistreat their wives, right? So they believe that even they have the right to beat their women once they are married. So such kind of practices we've seen, there's a surge to it, all right? And talking about the meaning as to what do we understand by the term crimes against women. So the crimes which are directed towards the women are basically known as crime against women. Physical, it can be mental cruelty. Okay, so if we go by the definition which has been propounded by United Nations in the year 1900. Okay, so students, I'll be taking your questions after I complete my presentation. Okay, so let me finish it off and then I'll hear you all. So talking about the United Nations organization. So talking about the definition which has been given by the United Nations organization in the year 1993, the term violence against women has violence that results or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to women. So as per the definition, it's not always necessary that there has to be actual infliction of injuries and pain to the body of women. Simply the assault, that is an apprehension in the mind of the victim that there is a threat to her life, or she may be subjected to physical torture or cruelty. That apprehension, that assault itself comprises violence against women. All right. So I hope the meaning is clear to you all as to what comprises crimes against women. It is an offense, it is a violence that is directed against a woman. It can be physical, it can be mental, it can be any sort of torture, cruelty, or any act that may cause suffering or pain or may be detrimental to the dignity of the women. Now, talking about the constitutional provisions, what laws do we have? What provisions do we have in our country to safeguard the rights of the women? So, first of all, as we know, the Constitution is the lex loci, that is the law of the land, supreme law. and through constitution, various other laws derives its constitutionality and validity, right? It becomes important for us to first discuss the constitutional provisions as to how this supreme document has ensured the safety and security of women in our country. Talking about the preamble, we know preamble is an introduction to the Constitution. The initial part of the Constitution is the preamble, and if we give a glance to the preamble, we understand that the preamble itself has guaranteed equality, freedom, liberty to all the citizens of India, irrespective of their sex. All right. So the Constitution prohibits any sort of discrimination against the citizen on the basis of gender. The same is embodied in the preamble itself. Moving ahead, part third, which is the fundamental rights. Okay, this part comprises of the fundamental rights. So I'll be talking about these articles later, but this chapter is important. It is important. The reason being, this part guarantees, or under this parts, the fundamental rights of the citizen of the country has been enshrined. Along with that, if you see the directive principles of the state policy, again, the states have been endowed with the responsibility to make certain policies and schemes for the upliftment and the empowerment of women. Apart from that, we have fundamental duties, okay, certain duties entrusted upon the citizen of the country towards obviously the country. And in such duties, one of the important duty is again to safeguard the rights and to treat women with respect. Okay. So now I'll be discussing the various articles. Article 14 in the Constitution of India, it confers on men and women equal rights and opportunities in respect of political, economic, and social sphere. So there cannot be any discrimination on the basis of gender of a person. So Article 14 ensures equality before law and equal protection of laws. All right. But then, does it allow discrimination? The question arises here. Yes, the state under Article 15, Clause 3 is empowered to come up with certain policies and schemes that may, in a way, promote protective discrimination. Okay, so we know women are highly vulnerable, children are highly vulnerable. So in order to secure them, in order to protect them, in order to ensure the safety, the states may come up with certain policies and schemes and measures that may seem discriminatory or contravening Article 14, but again, as per 15 clause 3, the state is empowered to do so. All right. Coming to Article 15, Article 15 also prohibits discrimination against any citizen on and sex. So prohibition of discrimination is guaranteed under Article 15. At any cost, the state is not permitted to come up with certain measures or policies which may discriminate amongst a citizen on the basis of sex. We have Article 16. Article 16 of the Constitution again in so opportunities in matter appointment to any office under the state. So simply because a person is a woman, she shouldn't be devoid or refrained from pursuing a profession of her choice. All right, just because of her gender, she shouldn't be disallowed to continue a profession of her choice. So this is what has been guaranteed under Article 16, that all are equal, irrespective of the sex and gender. Nobody should be refrained or devoid of the right relating to any matters concerning employability and appointment. So moving ahead with other constitutional provisions, we have Article 39A and D. Now these two imposed on the states to come up with certain policies which again ensures equality amongst both men and women. Like, for example, both men and women should be given equal right to means of livelihood, discriminated on the basis of their sex. As I told you, women on the basis, just because a person is a woman, she shouldn't be disallowed or shouldn't be refrained from, pursuing a profession of her choice. Similarly, you have equal pay for equal work. All right, just because a woman can be easily exploited or she has no one to, speak for herself, that shouldn't be the ground or constrain her to be feeble or incapable to that of men. She shouldn't be paid less for the work that she does along with her male counterpart. So same protection has been guaranteed under Article 39A and D, that as such, as far as the work is concerned, if both men and women are employed in the same institute and doing this nature of work is also the same, and accordingly the salary, the wages that they draw should also be same. All right, we have Article 51A subclause D. This is again a fundamental duty, as I told you, that the constitution bestows certain responsibilities on the citizens. So again, one of the responsibility of the citizens are to renounce practices which are derogatory to the dignity of the women. Let's say, for example, prostitution or those practices which is detrimental to the dignity or the modesty of the women shouldn't be practiced and shouldn't be promoted. Article 42 is equally very important. What does it do? It ensures just and human conditions of work and maternity relief. Let's say, for example, if women are working in some institute, it is the responsibility of the employer to ensure proper sanitary facilities. All right, there should be drinking water facilities. If the female worker, let's say, if you must have observed, right, when there's construction going on, the females are along with small babies, right? Babies are playing somewhere near the sand and she's constantly working throughout. So again, that is against the constitutional provisions, because under Article 48, the employer is mandated to make such facilities for the child of the laborers, arrange a creche kind of things, wherein the child can be easily engaged, and they are not, exposed to that dangerous side, and they are in a way protected. So such kind of arrangements has to be made by the employers while they employ the female workers. Apart from that, they are also entitled to maternity benefits that we can discuss later when we'll discuss provisions. I hope this is clear to all of you. So these were the constitutional provisions wherein we saw that how the Constitution has tried to ensure, to uplift and empower women in all the different spheres, ensuring the right to education, ensuring them a right to equal work, ensuring them right to equal wages, and mandating the citizens, or expecting the citizens to renounce all those practices which are detrimental to their dignity. Now, talking about laws, what laws do we have that protects the rights of women in our country? If I have to talk about laws, there's certain laws which I feel is very much important. You have Factories Act of the year 1948. This act is important because under the provisions of this act, a woman cannot be forced to work beyond 8 hours. You can engaged in any sort of work. All right. Moreover, it prohibits the employment of women, the working hours that has been stipulated under the act is between 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. That is, you cannot employ a woman, you cannot ask her to remain back, and you cannot again engage a woman before 6 a.m. Okay, so 6 to 7 should be the working hours. Okay, students, so I was talking about various legal provisions that exist in our country for safeguarding the rights of women. So, Factories Act, as I've already mentioned, what all the provisions are there. Beyond 8 hours, a woman cannot be employed, and there is again a time limit which has been stipulated, that is 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Apart from that, we have Maternity Benefit Act of the year 1961. So, as per this act, a woman is entitled for 12 weeks maternity relief with full wages. All right. So, we all know the biological, process that goes on when a woman is pregnant. So after giving birth to a child, she has to take care of the child for at least a period of 6 months. That is the lactating period, right? Wherein the woman feeds her child. So this during this period, she has every right to stay back home, or she's entitled, as per the provision, of course, of Maternity Benefit Act of the year 1961. She's entitled to a leave, maternity leave, for a period of 12 weeks, that too with full wages. Okay, so this is again an effort which is made from the end of the state to ensure that the rights of the women are protected and they're not exploited. So they are not expelled out of their jobs during such time period. Okay, so in a way, their jobs are secured, and at the same time, they are able to take care of their children. The another important act is the Dowry Prohibition Act of the year 1961. So why this act is important? This act is important because it penalizes the demand of dowry either before, during the marriage, or after the marriage. Okay, so if there's a demand from the end of the in-laws of the women, so such a demand or such an act of the in-laws is considered to be an offense, and the same is punishable under the Dowry Prohibition Act. This is again has been drafted with an intention to to ensure that there is no exploitation of women after she leaves the house of her parents. Another important legislation that we have is Equal Remuneration Act of the year 1976. So this act is again important because it ensures equal wages for equal work. There cannot be any discrimination on the basis of sex. You cannot say that, oh, a woman is weaker than male, she's not able to work as a male is able to work. So hence let's not pay her equally. All right. So such kind of contentions are not accepted. If you have employed a woman for that 8 hours and the nature of the work is also same, then in that case she's entitled to equal wages. Now, another important legislation that we have is the Child Marriage Restraint Act of the year 1976. Now, there has been a slight amendment made in the year 2021. Now that the earlier the marriageable age of the girl was 18, it has been enhanced to 21. Okay, sorry, it was in case of earlier it was 15, then it was enhanced to 18, and now with an amendment in the year 2021, it has been raised to 21, equivalent to that of the boys. All right. So now the marriageable age of a girl is 21, as equal to that of the age of a boy. Another important legislation that we have is the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act of the year 1971. So an update in this act is that uh, in the year 2021, the gestation period has been increased. Okay, so earlier it was quite less, but that gestational period has been now increased, and now women can make a choice for themselves whether they want to keep a baby or they do not want to. And initially, the woman, if she wanted to abort a child, she had to take the medical medical advices of at least two doctors. Now the number has been reduced from two to one. So generally, you have seen in rape cases wherein a woman is impregnated. So the biggest question here is whether she should keep the baby or she should abort. So again, see how how the important decisions in women's life is taken by the society, right? So it's the society which decides what kind of dresses a girl should be wearing. It's the society which decides, or state that decides at what age a woman should be married. It's the society again which decides that, you know, how many child women should bear. So the entire process, is gone through by a woman. She's the one who keeps the child in the womb for 9 months. Thereafter, she is the one who gives birth. She's the one who has to take care of the baby. But then ultimately, it's the decision of the either in-laws or the husband who decides the number of child that the couple should have. So such pertinent decision, in fact, whom she is going to marry or whom she should marry is also decided by the family. Such pertinent decisions of her life, which determines her existence, that is also taken by the society or obviously the family members. All right. So this medical termination of pregnancy act has given liberty to the woman to decide as to whether she want to continue with the baby or she wants to abort it. All right. So this is again a legislation which is drafted or promulgated to secure the rights of the women. Another important legislation is Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act of the year 2005. Now, this act, when it was legislated, and nobody supported it, the reason being it was believed that it has high chances of being misused. But the fact remains that merely in this ground that it is prone to be misused. I mean, just on this ground, the legislation should not stop from legislating a law. I mean, if you see the other laws, every legislation can be misused, right? But that doesn't mean that we do not have law in that particular or for that particular issue. So having a law is very important. At least we give a chance for the women to fight for their rights, and later obviously it can be regulated by the courts, and obviously through legislation that frivolous and concocted cases are easily chalked out and dealt accordingly. All right. So this act is important. It defines what domestic violence is. It includes any omission, commission, conduct. See, omission also. If you are not doing your responsibilities, if you are not fulfilling your responsibilities, all right, that also constitutes a domestic violence. So any apprehension, as I told you when I was discussing the definition propounded by the United Nations organization as to what is violence against women, I told you the assault, that is simply an apprehension in the mind of the victim that she may be subjected to violence, that itself constitutes violence. So similarly here also, any omission, any commission, any conduct that harms, injures, or has potential to harm the woman body, mind is termed as domestic violence. Sexual harassment of women at workplace, another important legislation. It was because of the landmark case Vishakhapatnam versus State of Rajasthan. Now, in this case, what happened? There was a social activist. She was against the child marriages, right? She would educate and sensitize and make people aware in villages that look, you should give chance to your daughters to go to school. You should educate them. You should not marry them so early. So this resulted ultimately in in sexual assault. I mean, there were few section of people in that village only who felt very offended because of her this activity, because what she was propagating they thought was contrary to the customs of their village, okay, or their practices, contrary to their practices or contrary to their customs. So they wanted to teach her a lesson. She was a teacher. They went to the workplace, and then they all, I mean, the group, that group which was offended, sexually assaulted her. So now, in this case, what happened? The matter was brought before the court. At this point of time, the court realized that as such, there is no legislation in India to safeguard the rights or to ensure the safety of women at workplaces. Hence, it came up with certain guidelines, and the same guidelines were incorporated by the legislature, and they had come up with Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal Act of the year 2013. Now, moving ahead, let's discuss some of the offences. Rape has been defined under Section 376. Now, you all must be familiar with Nirbhaya case, right? That recently happened, and because of which there was an amendment made in the year 2030, and this amendment had actually changed completely the definition of rape. Now, earlier, a very narrow interpretation was given to the word rape. All right, it simply included sexual intercourse against the wish, will, or consent of the woman. Now, any insertion of foreign material or foreign body, or any sort of intrusion or invasion in the body of a woman is considered to be a rape. Okay, and now you know that the Justice Verma Committee was constituted, and then people at large, they participated, and they came up with their suggestions, and the same was incorporated in the committee report, and hence it was of the opinion that there is no point in enhancing the punishment for rape. The best thing that the government could do is to ensure speedy redressal to the victim and proper implementation of the laws that already exist. Where are we lacking? We have innumerable laws, right? I've talked about constitutional provisions. I've talked about various legislation. We know that there is no lack of legislation. We have enough of legislation. Where are we lacking? Implementation. So this was reiterated by the Justice Verma Committee, and it stated that look, death penalty for rape is not a solution. Now, what happened? The punishment got enhanced, right? Ultimately, we saw that through an ordinance of the president, the punishment has been enhanced to capital punishment, but not in all cases in heinous, like, for example, gang rapes and where the victim dies during rape. In such cases, the punishment have been enhanced. This was stated in Justice Verma Committee report that if you pronounce or if you award capital punishment for rape, the rapist would not leave the victim. All right. So in order to hush up the evidence or hush up the voice of the victim, he would kill the victim. And this is what happened. Thereafter, we saw many instances wherein the rapist would not only rape but even kill the victim. So having law or having stringent law is not enough, because that would not deter the offenders. What would deter the offenders? What will instill a sense of fear in their minds is the strict implementation of the laws that we already have. Another, offense that are practiced against women is kidnapping. Kidnapping is taking away a child from the custody of the parents. Abduction, luring, enticing a person, or taking away that person by use of force is abduction. The same has been talked about under Section 363 and 373 of Indian Penal Code. We have homicide for dowry. So what is homicide? Homicide is basically killing of a person by another person. So death for dowry deaths, or even their attempts are considered or has been, has been designated as an offense under Section 302, 304B of Indian Penal Code. Torture, mental, physical is covered under Section 498A of Indian Penal Code. Molestation of a woman, Section 354 of Indian Penal Code. We have sexual harassment, as I talked about, Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan. It is also covered under Section 509 of Indian Penal Code. Importation of girls. Importation means exporting girls or even importing girls from other countries to India or from India to other countries for the purpose of, let's say, prostitution, trafficking, or sale of organs is again prohibited and punished under Section 366B of Indian Penal Code. Acid attack. Again, this was introduced in the year 2013. 362A defines acid attack any by use of acid or chemicals, any defamation, burns, or injuries caused to the victim is termed as acid attack, and for that we have strict punishment. And sale and purchase of acid has also been regulated by this provision. Voyeurism, again introduced the year 2030. Voyeurism, what is voyeurism? Voyeurism is when you observe a girl indulge in some private activity. Let's say, for example, a girl is in a bathroom taking a shower. You just record her, and thereafter circulate her video amongst your friends and others. So, such kind of act of yours is penalized and punished under Section 354C of the Indian Penal Code. Disrobing means taking off the clothes of a woman. All right, all of a sudden you just try to take away her dress and uh, make her naked in front of everyone. So that is again a offense under Section 354B of Indian Penal Code. Moving ahead. So students, yes, these were the offenses. All right. Offenses against women under the Indian Penal Code. Now we'll talk about special initiatives that has been taken for women by the government. Okay, we have National Commission of Women that was constituted in the year 1992. Now, why this statutory body was set up? It was set up to monitor all matters relating to the constitutional and legal safeguards provided for women and to review the existing legislation to figure out the gaps, loopholes, and accordingly make suggestions to amend those. All right. So we have reservation for women in local self-government. In order to ensure the participation of women, it's a country wherein we see right at the grassroots level. So it's not just one section, but also all section of the society. So even to encourage the participation of the women in politics and local self-government, there was an amendment done in the year 1992, that is 73rd and 74th Amendment. So through this amendment, there was three-tier system established, that is center state, and you have local self-governments like panchayats, municipalities, right? So in these local self-government, to encourage the participation of the women, a certain percentage of seats were reserved for the women. That is one-third of total seats for women in all elected offices were reserved in local bodies, whether it was in rural India or urban areas. All right. So National Plan of Action for the Girl Child. Again, this was a plan which was taken up by the government, and this was to ensure the survival, protection, and development of the girl child with the ultimate objective of building up a better future for them. So now, how can we conclude this lecture? If we have to conclude this lecture, I would tell you that despite having stringent laws, despite having innumerable laws, still we hear of offenses against women each and every day, right? So we've understood that laws simply cannot deter the offenders. It's important that there has to be sensitization, there has to be social awakening, there has to be social awareness. And it starts right from our home, isn't it? We've seen, I'm not talking about urban areas, if you see rural areas, there is is still this practice. Mother would offer a glass of milk to the son and totally neglect a girl child. What will a girl child do? Ultimately, she has to leave her house and go to some other house, right? She'll be serving there. But the son is the bread earner. He has to be strong. He has to be fit because he has to earn for us and take care of ourselves. So, this is the mindset which has to be changed, right? If a girl, let's say, is not safe at her home, can we expect her to be safe out of the home? No. We've seen that how girls are molested and sexually abused by their own relatives, whether it is chacha, whether it is mama. So obviously, I'm saying this on the basis of data, right? On the basis of surveys, on the basis of data, that even homes for girls are not safe. So forget about the society. Think what she has to go through if she steps out of the society. So this social awakening is very much important, students, and until and unless we change up our mind, you have seen politicians saying, even in case of Nirbhaya, how brutally she was raped, but you have or you must have heard politicians saying that what was that girl doing out at evening? She should have stayed at home. Why was she roaming around with a boyfriend? Such kind of mindset. See, obviously the people would blame the girl. Why was she wearing a skirt? Why was she not properly dressed up? Why was she exposing her body parts? But then we have instances wherein a woman wearing saris, they are also raped. We have cases wherein a woman wearing hijabs completely covered, they are also being raped. We've seen women of 60, 70 years being raped. We've seen a child of 2 years being raped. So ultimately, the fault is not ours. The fault or the problem is the mindset of the people. So this mindset has to be changed, and until unless it's changed, the laws can be of no use. Okay, having laws. Apart from that, strict implementation is equally very much important. And if we are not able to implement those laws, there's no point of having, the laws. Fast track courts, again, we know the criminal justice system of our country. I mean, it is pro accused. You have right to bail for the accused. You have right to probation for the offenders. You have right to rehabilitation for the offenders. What right do you have for the victims? None. Okay. So the Indian criminal justice system is pro accused. You, the if you think just in case of Nirbhaya, you see, I mean, just because it was a case which was taken over by the media and it got so much of limelight, hence, the parents was able to get justice. There's so many cases that happens, and trust me, these cases do not even get registered. Why? The mindset. Parents, they hush up. See, nobody's going to marry you. It's ultimately the girl is stigmatized. Her character is blemished. Okay. Parents are not worried about the justice or the fact that, look, bad has been done. I mean, something wrong has been committed against our child, so we should go to the court because they know the process. It is delayed. The kind of questioning, the kind of interrogation, the kind of mental trauma, the delay. So these all has attributed to the surge, in the cases of offenses against the women. So here, of course, the fast track courts will help us. Speedy trial and speedy redressal to the victim is definitely going to help us. Role of NGOs, again, NGOs plays a very important role. It can, in a way, help us to at least ensure, or they can take up the cause or represent the victims, because we know they are at times very poor financially, they are not that sound, they are not a very vital role and ensure that, look, you should fight for your rights. It's not proper, it's not good to be mute, right? This gives strength to the offender. They feel कि ये लोग तो कुछ बोलते ही नहीं है, they don't say anything, they don't speak up. So let's keep on committing such offenses against them. So we should stand for our rights, we should fight irrespective of the fact that we'll get justice or not. But standing for yourself is very important. Emphasis on educational rights of girl child, because once you educate a girl child, you make them capable. Once they're capable, they're independent, they're able to fight for themselves. So yes, these are the factors which I thought may be helpful in empowering the girls and safeguarding their rights. So with this, I end up here, students. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I look forward for questions from your end, if there are any.
Right. So, guys, if you have any questions, please do write it down on the chat box. In the meanwhile, I have some questions which you guys have sent to us while filling these forms. So, Agrita from Gorakhpur asks, why are women being paid less than men? It will take years for the total eradication of women harassment. Your views on it. So, Bharti ma'am, if you can go ahead and uh, take that.
Yeah, exactly. Student, I absolutely second her. When to eradicate such kind of ill treatment or offense. I mean, completely eradication is not possible. It's gonna ultimately take time, but then if it has to be, uh, it has to start right from us. So there has to be a change in mindset, and this is how we can contribute from our end. Anyhow, this discrimination or equal pay for equal wages is promoted and secured by the constitutional provisions, which I've already stated, and along with that you also have certain other legislation which I've talked about. Yes, through that we can guarantee that women are paid equally as their male counterpart for the same
Right,
work
ma'am.
that they do.
Yazini from Erode, she asks, if a woman kills someone for defense purposes, will she be punished under law?
No, not at all. So this is covered under private defense. Okay, if she is exercising her private defense and she goes to the extent of killing of a person, still she shall be immune.
We have another question from Unnati. Is there any law in India protecting men from rape?
All right. Yes, if we see the laws in our country, they are gender biased, they are not gender neutral. Uh, yes, we have a long way to go, but then, generally, if you see the offenses against the women are much higher as compared to the male counterparts, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a law. Right, even we've seen that how cases are being reported wherein males are sexually being assaulted. So yes, that is going to take time, but for now we have all laws that are gender biased and not gender neutral.
Yash asks, why do we need a new legislation if we have punishment for sexual harassment in the Indian Penal Code?
We don't need punishment. Okay, you are talking about sexual harassment, a separate legislation that we have, right?
Right.
So it is a complementary. Yeah, this legislation is simply strengthening the provisions that we have in IPC. All right. So maybe under IPC we are covering only one aspect, but if you see the Sexual Harassment Act, there are various other aspects which are being covered. So this is a complementary and supplementary legislation, and it strengthens as to what has been stated under your Indian Penal Code. So there's nothing contrary. So there's nothing to worry.
Riddhi has an interesting question. If someone is facing the discrimination at home, how can we deal with it?
Again, I told you mindset. We have to change our mindset. We have to sensitize from our end. If you see someone, discriminating a girl, you need to speak at that time. Look, this is a practice which should not be, generally exercised, and you should not be discriminating a girl child. They equally have equal rights with that of men, and the rights are equally protected by the constitution. I mean, being a law student, this is what you can do from your end to sensitize the masses to at least speak whenever needed.
Right. Anonymous attendee, they have a question for us. Why is marital rape not criminalized in India yet?
All right. So marital rape, see, there are various grounds for which we have not yet criminalized marital rape. You must have heard the parliamentarian saying that this will dismantle the institute of marriage, right? So I don't agree with what they say. I'm also of this opinion that such a practice, that is marital rape, should be penalized. Again, I told you the members that we have in legislation, they themselves have criminal record, right? They don't want stringent laws because ultimately they'll also be in a way they'll also be, I mean, trapped in that laws. So you've seen that how the parliamentarians and the legislative members, they at times speak to their female counterparts. So again, there's this mental state of mind, and the fact that the marriage as an institution will be dismantled, and hence women frivolous cases, of course, let's say if a woman is having extramarital affair and she wants to get rid of her husband, the simplest thing that she can do is accuse her husband of marital rape, and charge him of this offense, and accordingly get rid of the relationship. So these are the reasons for which we are still not encouraging or encouraging the criminalization of marital rape. But then yes, there has been there has been voices which we hear from the end of this women who are of this belief that this kind of offenses should be penalized. So maybe in coming days we'll see a change.
All right, Bharti, ma'am, to hear you speak. And the one thing which I'll take away from this session was this thing which you said when you said that ultimately it boils down to the mindset and nothing. If we do not change the mindset, regardless of how many ever laws we keep on bringing, this menace will still persist in our society like ours. So with this, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for taking this session. It was an amazing session. We got to know so many relevant laws and so many things, the jurisprudence behind these laws, all of it. I hope the students have also liked the session, and clearly so with their questions. I am pretty sure I have no qualms about it that they have liked the session. So thank you again, Bharti ma'am, for coming and giving us the important information related to the offences against women in India. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you for having me here. It was really nice interacting with the students.
Right.
Thank you once again.